Okay, so this is an introduction to using BEDMAS. BEDMAS and integers. BEDMAS stands for brackets, CK, UTS, exponents, no, please. Okay, division, multiplication, okay, addition and subtraction. Okay. What that is basically telling you is when you have a question with multiple operations, that's the order that they want you to do it. So if you have 4 plus 3 times 2, okay, you start with your multiplication first, okay? So that means your next line is going to be 4 plus 3 times 2 is 6. Okay. Now you can add 4 plus 6. Your answer is 10. Okay. If we're using brackets, four plus 2 inside of a bracket times 4. Okay? You start with the bracket, which means you're beginning by adding 4 plus 2. 4 plus 2 is 6. And now you can put what's left times 4. My answer is 24. Okay? Finally, with exponents, two plus 3 inside of a bracket squared times 4. Okay, our first step is the bracket, the B in BEDMAS. So our next line reads, 2 plus 3 is 5. You still have the squared up there, squared times 4. After brackets come exponents. So you do the 5 squared next. 5 squared is 25 because 5 times 5 equals 25. We're multiplying that by 4. Our final answer is going to be 100. Okay? So that's a basic review of BEDMAS. As long as you follow the acronym, and as long as you make sure that you're doing them in the right order, it's simple, basic math. Okay? Now, where things get a little bit not out of hand, but a little bit trickier, is when you're including the use of integers. Because you really have to be mindful of your symbols. Okay? So let's start with a basic one here. we'll put all of our integers in brackets. -4 plus -2 times -2. Okay? Instantly, what you need to recognize is that that's multiplication. Okay? So that's our first step. Our first step is doing multiplication. So my next line is going to read -4, okay, plus -2 times -2. 2 times 2 is 4, okay? When I'm multiplying a negative times a negative, my answer is a positive, okay? So it becomes -4 plus 4, okay? Thinking of my number line here, I'm starting on -4, and I'm moving it 4 spots to the right. So -4 plus 4 equals 0. So this is a really basic example of using integers with BEDMAS. Okay? We're going to take it to another step now. Okay? Very similar question. -4 plus -2 times 2. All we've changed here is one of the negative symbols on the 2 times 2. Okay? Same process. Okay? We should begin with our multiplication. So our next line reads -4 plus 2 times 2 is 4. I'm multiplying a negative times a positive. So my answer is going to be a negative. Okay? I'm adding -4 plus -4. My starting point is -4, and I'm being asked to move it. When I'm adding a negative, that's 4 spots to the left, which means -4 plus -4, my answer is -8. Okay? Again, -2 times -2, my answer, sorry, -2 times +2, my answer is -4. When I'm adding -4 plus -4, my answer is -8. Now with brackets, when we're dealing with negatives and integers in BEDMAS, our brackets are square parentheses. So it's -3 plus -3, close my bracket, divided by -2. Okay, so we're increasing the difficulty here. Okay. First step, always in BEDMAS, is our bracket. We're adding -3 plus -3. So I start on -3, and because I'm adding a negative, I'm moving 3 spots to the left. My answer is now -6 divided by -2. Okay? Simple division with integers. 6 divided by 2 is 3. I'm dividing a negative by a negative, so my rule tells me that the answer is a positive. Okay? And my answer is positive 3. If I were to include an exponent in this question, sorry. Let's quickly add an exponent. So it's negative 3 plus negative 3 squared divided by negative 2. Okay? Negative 3 plus negative 3 is negative 6. We've already determined that. Squared divided by negative 2. Okay? Negative 6 squared is the same thing as saying negative 6 times negative 6 divided by negative 2. Negative 6 times negative 6. 6 times 6 is 36. Because it's two negatives, negative times a negative is a positive. So 36 divided by negative 2. 36 divided by 2 is 18. Okay? But because I'm dividing a positive by a negative, my answer is always going to be a negative. Okay. So there's a nice basic review of BEDMAS and the inclusion of integers in the questions. Not until